As a history teacher, I get the question all the time, why do we need to know this? Whether we're learning about the Chinese dynasties or Teddy Roosevelt's Square Deal versus Woodrow Wilson's New Freedom Platform, the answer is always the same. We actually don't need to know this. Okay, but clearly I still think we should all learn history, so why? The go-to answer is often to avoid repeating the mistakes of the past. And while that sounds great in theory, the truth is we do repeat the same mistakes over and over and over again. Think about it. Military leaders from Alexander the Great to Napoleon to modern times keep invading the same places with disastrous results. Shout out to Afghanistan and Russia, especially in winter. Powerful civilizations rise, grow corrupt, and eventually collapse. Looking at you, Rome, Ottoman Empire, Soviet Union, and no one else. So, what's the point of studying history if we are kind of doomed to repeat it? The real value of learning history, in my opinion, is not just about understanding what happened in the past, but why it happened. You can't just memorize the events. You have to think about them from different perspectives. In this way, history is really about understanding people, which is good news because people are endlessly fascinating. You might think of history as a stale list of people, events, and dates. The people especially seem unreal, like who can relate to someone with a life-size painted portrait? But every single person from history was just a random human who did stuff that we now consider important. They were real people just like you. And they were weird, like all of them. Albert Einstein hated socks because they always got holes in them. Queen Elizabeth I loved sweets so much that she had major dental issues. Julius Caesar, he rocked a laurel wreath to hide his thinning hairline. Do these facts change history or our understanding of it? No, not really, but they do make these figures feel real. And once you realize that everyone in history was just a person like you and me, the whole thing becomes way more interesting. So for me, the biggest reason to study history is that it helps us understand who we are and how we got here. If you want to understand why your parents act the way they do, ask them about their childhood. If you want to know why your city's roads are so confusing, look into when and why your city was built, and who was included in the building process or excluded. I'm looking at you, I-35. If you're watching a national political debate and want to know who to vote for or why the candidates disagree on a certain or almost every topic, there's most definitely key moments in our country's political history that are going to help you navigate those discussions more easily. History is really all about understanding the bigger picture. The most important skill that we can learn from studying history is how to contextualize, how to zoom out and get more information about what led us to a certain point and what else is happening at the same time somewhere else that also has an impact. The facts are not the important thing. The process for how we make sense of those facts. That's the real value in thinking like a historian. So forget memorizing dates. It's one of the biggest hurdles that I see with students who enter my classroom. They tell me on the very first day of school, I'm terrible at memorizing. And then they act like that means they're just going to be completely useless the entire school year. Fortunately for them, I don't really care about memorizing dates. Genuinely, that's what Google's for. But we study history to learn to think like a historian. And besides why we should even study history to begin with, a lot of people want to know how we can learn the facts of history. Like, where do I go or what book do I read to figure out the truth of what actually happened and why and how it happened? I'm really sorry to disappoint you, but that doesn't exist. Bias is inevitable. There's no such thing as just the facts in true history. Every historical text or document you come across will have bias because it's all documented or created or curated by human beings. And humans always have bias. It's just unavoidable. There's no way to approach history by just learning or teaching the facts, because even the question of which facts are presented and in what order could skew your understanding. Like, let's say we want to learn about George Washington through just the facts. Okay, well, he became the commander of the Virginia Regiment during the French and Indian War. Then he was elected to the Virginia House of Burgesses. When the American Revolution began in 1775, he was chosen as commander-in-chief of the Continental Army. Eventually, once the Constitution created the position, Washington was elected to serve as the first president of the United States. He served 2 terms and then retired to his home at Mount Vernon. Washington died on December 14th, 1799 at the age of 67. Okay, first of all, that's so boring. And second of all, okay, and? Why do we care about any of that? How is that list of facts helpful in any way beyond maybe being able to answer a trivia question? And most importantly for this conversation, why were those the facts that I chose to present to you? What facts did I leave out? How might it change your understanding of Washington if I add in the fact that he first inherited 10 enslaved people when he was just 11 years old? And at the time of his death, he directly owned 123 enslaved people. Those are facts too, but it's likely that they're going to have an impact on your thinking about Washington. And whether I choose to present those facts at all, and how and when I present them, all change the narrative, even if they are just facts. Even something that might seem totally factual and unbiased, like a map or a graph showing numbers, it's not always what it seems. Like, who made the map? Why did they put Europe in the center and not Asia? Which, by the way, makes more sense because then you aren't cutting the Pacific Ocean in half, but whatever. What colors do they use? What names do they use for the different countries? Do they translate them in English or use the names in the country's original language? So whenever you're learning from a historical document, including my own narrative that I present to you here on this channel, just know that everything you see is part of the story. You're never going to get the whole truth about what happened in the past. So where do we go from here? If everything is biased and time is weird and we're doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past, what's the point? What do we do? Well, you become a historian. You gather as much information as you can and piece together the puzzle. You'll never finish. You might think you're done, but then you'll realize there's one piece missing that's going to drive you insane. But you still do the work. You consult a textbook for the basic facts, but be mindful of which facts that particular textbook has deemed important, like which topics get their own bolded section, which topics get an image. Is it in color or black and white? And then you read, you watch, you listen to analysis from many secondary sources. But know that even if I try my best to be as neutral as possible, my analysis is still impacted by my own opinions, my own background and experiences, by my personal context. And the most important thing you can do to become a historian is just go straight to the source, the primary sources. Look at the original documents, add in what you know from basic facts plus secondary analysis, and then come up with your own interpretation. You're allowed to have an opinion about history as long as it's rooted in facts and legitimate sources. So get in there, dig around. We study history because it's interesting and because we'd be even more doomed if we didn't. And thinking like a historian can help you navigate the chaos and complexity of the world around you in a way that will remind us that we've been here before, and this too, good or bad, shall pass. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe and join patreon.com/antisocialstudies.